Hi there. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Thursday, January 16th, 2025. And we start out with the flying weather conditions and categories. We're watching a couple areas of low pressure. The first one, as of this Thursday afternoon, it's rather broad. It's going to be impacting cutting across the central western Aleutians, pushing up into the Bering. Already some of that energy has been working its way north and northeastward. And then a second low is going to come up south of the eastern Aleutians from the North Pacific and then ride northward just off the west coast over the course of this weekend. So starting Friday morning from the initial low that's lifting further north up into the central Bering west of the Yukon Delta out there south of St. Lawrence Island. Friday morning, we have widespread IFR conditions there from about Nome and St. Lawrence down through Nunavik Island back toward the western and central Aleutians. Also IFR conditions expected along areas of the North Pacific along the Alaska Peninsula up into Kodiak Island, Kamishak Bay, and around areas of the southwest interior. Getting into Friday afternoon, we still find areas of IFR conditions creeping up along the southeast facing slopes of the Alaska range from about Windy Pass down through Lake Clark, east there of Lake Iliamna, and then down through Shelikof Strait on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. The initial low impulse lifts further north there up into the central northern Bering, also producing IFR conditions. There are a number of winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings. Nunavik, or I should say St. Lawrence Island has a blizzard warning in effect. So there's going to be concerns there out through the western coast and spreading into the western interior Friday into Saturday morning for low ceilings, visibilities, and snow, or even some snow mixed with rain, strong gusty winds, also providing turbulence. So it's going to be active weather there across the west side of the state. Meanwhile, the Alcan border, we have an area of high pressure I was talking about the other day, rebuilds to above 1050 millibars over northwest Canada. So VFR conditions are expected across the Panhandle and up in through especially the central eastern interior and along the Alcan border. Saturday morning, we continue to see IFR conditions from areas of the Chukchi Sea, the west-southwest slopes of the Brooks Range, up into the Seward Peninsula around Nome, and then just through the Bering Strait southwestward across a good portion of the northern and central Bering. Also, IFR conditions there in the southwest Wood-Tikchik State Park area, as well as up along the Alaska range. We find IFR conditions and some of that moisture creeping further northeastward, west side of Prince William Sound, the eastern Kenai. We're also going to see strong winds potentially through the Alaska range, so there will be turbulence there through the passes of the Alaska range, as well as along the ridge lines. And for Saturday afternoon, we expect IFR conditions continuing along southward facing slopes of the Brooks Range, all from around the Bering Strait southward, Nome, St. Lawrence Island down through the YK deltas, and then again down along especially the spine and southeast facing slopes of the Alaska range, western portion of Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai, Kodiak Island, down through Shelikof Strait into the southwest portion of the Gulf. Now, past conditions on Friday, Anatuvik Pass VFR becoming MVFR as the day wears on. Hadigan Pass should generally be able to hold on to VFR conditions on Friday. And then further southwest, that west arm of the Alaska range, especially the southeastward facing slopes, IFR conditions there, Lake Clark and Merrill. Rainy Pass, MVFR becoming IFR as we go through the day Friday. Windy Pass, starting VFR becoming MVFR. Same thing at Isabel Pass, VFR conditions becoming MVFR. And again, winds picking up through the Alaska range. So there are either high wind warnings or wind advisories that will be in effect in this time frame. And Mentasta Pass, VFR conditions are expected for Friday. Tanita Pass starting out Friday morning, VFR becoming MVFR. And then Portage Pass, especially the central areas of the pass, on over into Prince William Sound, look for MVFR conditions becoming IFR. Further, the west entrance will be VFR becoming MVFR. And then finally, across much of the Panhandle, and especially northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White VFR conditions will prevail on Friday. And looking at the freezing levels, we have the surface freezing line nudging upward into the southwest interior with that push of milder air coming in from the southwest off the lower Bering Sea. Back out, the freezing line in the morning runs along the northern Gulf Coast and through the outer portion of the Panhandle. There is a little slightly warmer air aloft trying to ride northward ahead of this occluded front south of the Alaska Peninsula. You see freezing levels bump up to 4,000 feet, but nothing all that impressive. But in terms of the precipitation, the cloud precipitation bearing clouds, we find the potential for some moderate icing, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay above 4,000 feet. Also generally above 3,000 feet across much of the west coast into the western interior there at lower Yukon, into the middle Yukon basin. Again, because we have these clouds that are producing snow, and you get up into those, especially once you get up above a few thousand feet, there could be some moderate icing. And then also way back to the west, there's the potential for some moderate icing in the western Aleutians above 4,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds are strongest over northwest Canada. We have a jet core upwards of 115 to 120 knots over British Columbia. It's kind of notice the ridge pattern. The axis of the ridge comes up from the eastern Gulf, west side of the Panhandle, all the way up into the central interior. And then on the backside, southwest flow of 70 to 85 knots from just the southeast part of the Bering Sea up into the Chukchi Sea. At 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, there is a broad belt of stronger mid-level winds. We find winds generally southerly here on the west side of the state in through the eastern Bering, around 40 to 50 knots from the Chukchi Sea coast across the western Brooks Range, Seward Peninsula, all the way down toward Kuskokwim Bay. But even stronger winds coming into the Alaska Peninsula from the North Pacific of 50 to 65 knots. And then as we drop things down to 3,000 feet, we do find a core of stronger low-level winds cutting across areas of the Seward Peninsula on up to Kivalina, Point Hope, and then also down there toward the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula and far eastern Aleutians, 50 to 65 knot winds coming northward from the North Pacific. So this all spells out the potential for some severe turbulence, especially there through areas of the southwest interior from just northwest of Lake Iliamna on up to the east side of Norton Sound into the highlands that are up there through the central portion of the Seward Peninsula. With that front lifting northeastward, we expect some moderate to isolated turbulence surface to 4,000 feet with some low-level wind shear in the vicinity of that front. And then as we trail out back behind it there across the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians, there could be some moderate turbulence on Friday, surface to 4,000 feet.